Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 4th of July 2016, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish, with me in the studio, Mike Robinson. The weather, with just a brief comment because it's grey, misty and cold here in Plymouth. It could be the winter. It might well be the winter. We'll leave it at that. Well, what's the state of the nation? Britain is descending into chaos, and of course this was promised by David Cameron if we dare to vote Brexit.
Yep.
And let's look at this extraordinary article. We've shown others. We've had the students who were so depressed about Brexit they had to have counselling. But here we've got one of the most intellectual ladies in the country, Cambridge Don, and she was so appalled at the Brexit vote that she decided the only way to deal with it was to strip naked in one of the meetings. So I'm going to say she lacked the intellectual argument, so strips. Is this behaviour normal? I don't think it's normal behaviour, so what's causing it? But if you want to have a look at the article, her name is Victoria Bateman, and she's a lecturer in economics at Gonville and Caius College. And there she had Brexit leaves Britain naked emblazoned across her breasts and stomach. So this, of course, is the sort of university choosing our future leaders, future elite, and that's the standard.
Yes.
Move on.
Move on. We'll move on to Nigel Farage because he has done his bit. Brian, he wants his life back. He said that the victory for the Leave side in the referendum means that his political ambition has been achieved. He said that he came to this struggle from business because he wanted the UK to be a self-governing nation, and he didn't do it to become a career politician. UKIP is in a good position, he says, and will continue with my full support to attract a significant vote. Whilst we will now leave the European Union, the terms of our withdrawal are unclear. If there's too much backsliding by the government and the Labour Party, and with the Labour Party detached from many of its voters, then UKIP's best days may yet be to come, but he doesn't want to be part of it. Brian, so what do we make of this?
Well, it's very easy for me, Mike, because I've been approached for years by people saying to me, what do I think of Nigel Farage? And my reply has never changed, and that is that Nigel Farage was tasked to lead UKIP into the cul-de-sac. He was there to wave the banner, produce the rhetoric, but to actually make sure that UKIP didn't achieve what it could achieve. And I'm quite sure that there's going to be at least two ladies listening to this programme today who remember after other successes of UKIP, they were told by the Nigel Farage hierarchy, well, don't press home the advantage, take some time off and relax. So this man has consistently failed to talk about any substance inside UK. He doesn't talk about what's going on in the courts. He's not talking about the unemployment. He's not talking about the breakdown of Britain's political structure. No, he's given the rhetoric speeches in the European Union. And of course, the Brexit vote does not mean we're outside the European Union. We're into a no man's land. And what does he do? You mentioned voters there. Well, he had 4 million UKIP voters. He's got 17 million Leave voters, and he doesn't want to press home the advantage and gather that strength.
So now we've got a Conservative Party in the middle of a leadership election, the Labour Party possibly in the middle of a leadership election, UKIP now in the middle of a leadership election, Liberal Democrats, well, they don't count for anything since the 2015 Parliament because they were completely decimated following that lot. So this nation is ungoverned. It's ungovernable.
Rudderless.
Totally rudderless. We're not getting out of the European Union anytime soon. And Farage has done his bit.
He's absolutely done his bit. Well, let's just have a look about how he might have done his bit, and we'll bring in Lily Allen. Now, I've got to be honest with viewers and listeners. I do not have a clue who this lady is.
Probably best that way, Brian.
But I've been very interested in this article, which was all about what she'd been tweeting. So let's have a look at what this lady was tweeting. Well, she'd been to a very interesting garden party, and she was very happy to tweet out that she's at the garden party and the great and the good are there. She says she's hoped she's not sitting next to Voldemort. But who have we got? Robert Murdoch and
Rupert
Nigel.
Murdoch.
Sorry, Rupert. I beg your pardon. Rupert Murdoch and Nigel Farage in close proximity. And what is going on here, Mike? Have you any idea? I don't really know, but I don't get a comfortable feeling. But then it gets better. So lots of credit to this lady because she took a little video. And here we've got Rupert with Nigel Farage and Liam Fox, who
at the top table.
At the top table, nice little cosy chat. And of course, when Nigel Farage disappeared over to New York, I think about a year ago, for a chat with top-level media people, we never did hear what was reported. So this is all very cosy. Liam Fox roughly putting his name forward to lead the Conservative Party. And of course, Liam Fox, who had to resign in disgrace because he was using one of his men, pretending that they were qualified to sit in on classified military government meetings. So mucky stuff, and let's take it a bit further because we've got this excellent Breitbart headline here with Sturgeon Eyes Reverse Green Line. I'm not really interested in that headline. What I am interested in is the embrace with Mr. Juncker. And the body language is interesting because that lady doesn't, I think, want to be too close to him. That's the impression I get. Certainly, it looks like her lower half is backed away from him. So let's remember this, because I tweeted this one out. Just fascinating. What was being whispered in Nigel Farage's ear? Was he kissing him? I don't think so. I think that was a whisper, clutching him to his bosom. What was actually discussed?
I love you.
You've done a good job. I love you. You've done a good job. You've played the game. You've taken those British anti-EU voters into a cul-de-sac. I think it's time for you to resign.
Could be. Could be. Well, later on today at 4 o'clock, in fact, the non-withdrawal of the EU is going to be a matter of questioning by the European Union Select Committee. They're going to have the Right Honourable David Lidington MP, Minister for Europe, and the Right Honourable Oliver Letwin, who is, of course, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, head of the Whitehall EU unit and head of the Cabinet Office. So they are going to be there to answer questions on the implications of the vote to leave the EU. The ministers will discuss the outcome of the 20th of June European Council, the result of the EU referendum, and key issues with the withdrawal negotiations and the process by which the UK will withdraw from the European Union. So anybody interested in that, it starts at 4:05. It's in the committee room at Palace of Westminster. These things are usually streamed out live on parliamentlive.tv.
Yeah, certainly people should be watching this because it gives impression of what's actually happening. Now, Mike, you pushed out some months ago that what we were going to see was a EU referendum psyop. That's clearly how it has played out step by step. We've now got people saying, well, we've won, we've got Brexit, we haven't got anything. They're talking about Article 50. They're not talking about repeal of the 1972 Act. And out of the woodwork comes Oliver Letwin. He's going to take us out, but it could take a very long time. We got Theresa May over the weekend saying, oh, Brexit could take a very long time. Stall, delay, lie, obfuscate. This is an EU referendum psyop designed to confuse the British public. And of course, while the debate goes on, what is the government doing? Locking us further into the EU mechanism. So the clock is going to strike 13, and let's have a look at Mr. Letwin. I tweeted this out over the weekend. Let's not forget that this man is N.M. Rothschild. Let's not forget that this man has been producing books talking about privatization of the world. And let's also not forget that this is the man who casually threw away classified documents in London waste bins, never brought to book for it. And this is the man that now we are to trust on Brexit negotiations. So an N.M. Rothschild banker, he's running the Cabinet Office, he's running the Tory party, he's running the Prime Minister, He's running the behavioural insights team. He's running the Brexit office. And Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, which is significant because this puts him right in with the Queen's purse. So we say, who is this man and what is giving him the power? It's a one-man state at the moment, Oliver Letwin.
Yes.
Not appearing in the press in that capacity, though.
No. No, other things which aren't appearing in the press. Brian, articles on Theresa May. This was fascinating. Kudos to Guido Fawkes for receiving the article. An article on Theresa May and her huge successes as Home Secretary was published in the Telegraph, subsequently pulled from the Telegraph. The journalist who wrote the article, seeming to be so hacked off by the fact that the article was spiked, that he has sent the full text to Guido Fawkes for publication. What was fascinating to me, Brian, was that when the news of this article broke, this article being pulled broke, I got onto, it was showing as a 404 on the Telegraph website, but I got onto the Wayback Machine, and at that point they had a version of the original article in full on the Wayback Machine. 24 hours later, it was gone from the Wayback Machine. So I wonder who has the power to do that.
Well, of course, we've seen David Cameron pulling Conservative Party election promises from the Tory Party website. So this is the British government. Over the weekend, Mike, I had several discussions with people talking about Brexit and what was happening. And I always said to those people, well, we're being governed by criminals. They're lying, they're cheating, they're into cover-up of child abuse. And it was very interesting because instead of getting that rejection, the wall that was coming out, you're now getting sort of a wry smile. I think people are beginning to see through this stuff, and it is in front of our face. Is it a turn away if you are?
I would say so. Somebody, was impressed by this article being taken down that they wondered why Theresa May hadn't had this image taken down from Bing image search, the Bing search engine's image search. I think it is an impressive picture, and we've got to ask: is this who we want to be Prime Minister?
Right. Well, perhaps she's just getting ready for the floods. She'll be out there in her wellies.
Yeah, well, quite possibly. Yes. Now, a good question in The Guardian here. Anyone seen the Queen? Isn't she meant to unite us? Now, of course, the Queen isn't doing her job at the moment. Hasn't been doing her job for quite some time. In case anybody wonders what her job is, well, she took an oath at her coronation to uphold the laws and customs of the people, the Constitution. In other words, she represents not parliamentary sovereignty, because there is no such thing, but the sovereignty of the people of the nation. But she isn't doing that job. But what she is doing is just telling people to keep calm and carry on. Just get on with it. Keep calm, carry on. So she was speaking at the opening of the 5th session of the Scottish Parliament. She said, of course, we all live and work in an increasingly complex and demanding world where events and developments can and do take place at remarkable speed. And retaining the ability to stay calm and collected can be at times hard. She said, and that was really the point of it. We should just shut up and get on with it.
It's very interesting, Mike, that when that original slogan came out during the Second World War, there was discussion, a lot of discussion about whether it should be used. And in fact, it wasn't used. And the reason it wasn't used is because it was felt that the British public would regard it as an insult, that under conditions of stress and wartime stress, they wouldn't stay calm. So what an interesting reflection on society that when there was a war going on and people under immense strain, the nation had such a high state of morale that nobody was going to say they weren't going to stay calm and actually carry on about their business. But I also add to that, if I may, of course, we should not forget that none of the wider press and media are talking about this key issue of the Queen accepting mediatisation. So is it our Queen? Well, we don't think so, because of course she simply said, I'll carry on with the money and the overall power and the title and the trappings, but I've handed power over to the European Union. Mediatisation is the word for it. treason is what other people would call it. But nobody is talking about this. And I think it's vital that we start to ask the questions as to why this lady has utterly betrayed the country.
Okay, moving on. NATO. It's now only 4 days until the NATO summit in Warsaw, and apparently NATO's enhanced forward presence will include 4 multinational battalions. So that's good. They continue with their useful tweets. Well, they're saying in the documentation for the upcoming summit, they're saying that NATO will continue to work closely with partners such as Finland, Sweden, and Georgia, who have a significant contribution to make to security in the strategically important Baltic Sea and Black Sea regions. So they're continuing to saber rattle with Russia. Well, Russia was meeting, or at least Putin was meeting with the Finnish president over the weekend, well, he said basically, well, he said this, in fact, he said, "Do you think we will continue to act in the same manner if Finland joins NATO? We have withdrawn our troops to a distance of 1,500 kilometers from the border. Do you think they will stay there?" And that's really the point here. They had quite cordial meeting, I believe, but Putin went on to say, "Anyway, we will respect any choice of the Finnish people. It's up to the Finnish people to decide how to defend their independence and ensure their safety. Of course, we value Finland's neutral status and respect it, but it's not up to us to address this issue." So that's pretty clear.
Well, isn't it extraordinary, Mike, after the suffering that went on in the Finland-Russian war, huge casualties, vast casualties on both sides, forgotten about, overridden by the rest of the Second World War. But then you've had those countries living quite happily side by side for the last, whatever it is now, 60 plus years, 60 years, whatever it is. And all of a sudden, it's now the situation is inflamed, being made aggressive. And how's that being done by NATO? Yeah.
Yep. Well, NATO, another NATO country is Iceland. And Iceland has authorized the return of US troops, allegedly amid the Russian threat. So what are they doing? They're moving, they had previously hosted US Air Force units, including Fighter Squadron, AWACS, and so on. Those units were withdrawn 6 years ago, and they've been replaced by a NATO air policing service. But now the US wants to go back because they're concerned about a resurgent Russia, and they want to make sure that they're able to deal with those nasty Russians should they decide to invade or something.
Well, this is all interesting stuff, Mike, because this is Cold War territory. Significant of Iceland is control of the Norwegian Sea, and that was to stop the Russian submarine fleet coming down and into the Atlantic. So we got to a situation where the Americans can give up that capability, and now all of a sudden we're being told that Russia is so aggressive they're going to have to rebuild all of that Cold War facility. It's when you dig into this stuff, it's a fantasy. It's another psyop being played out here. Just incredible.
Well, here's possibly another one. This is Franco-British defence cooperation, of course. Cameron was speaking to Hollande following the Battle of the Somme commemorations in France. And apparently a Downing Street spokesperson said that the Prime Minister held talks with President Hollande on the margins of the Somme centenary commemoration. They agreed the bilateral relationship between the UK and France was enduring and strong, and that our defence and security cooperation in particular would continue to go from strength to strength based on the solid foundation of the Lancaster House Treaty. They agreed a mutual commitment to continue to work closely together to protect our shared border in Calais and to maintain so-called juxtaposed controls. They discussed Hinkley Point and so on. And Cameron also reiterated his view that the UK should seek the closest possible relations with the EU, and in that context, the need for constructive post-referendum negotiations. But what's absolutely clear is that they are going to absolutely continue with this defence integration. Well, why have I captioned this? Soon Britain will be yours. Well, this is all part of the PSYOP, because what they are intentionally doing is putting Britain in a position where it's going to run rudderless for a period of time. that can have only a negative effect on the country. And when that negative effect hits us, they're going to say, well, it was all because we voted to leave the European Union. Whereas if they were all doing their jobs, if Cameron was doing his job, if MPs were doing their jobs instead of messing about with leadership campaigns and actually running the country, then perhaps we would be in a much stronger position than had we remained within the European Union.
This is true, Mike. Rudderless nation, but of course the other thing is we've got the military being absolutely destroyed from the inside. The last few days I was hearing some extremely interesting things about the Royal Navy, shortage, particularly of engineers, ships not going to sea because they haven't got the required people on board. And some units, 60% of the manpower have got their notice in to leave the Navy as the result of morale being so bad. So this is the deliberate undermining of British armed forces. 2 aircraft carriers, well, 1.5 aircraft carriers, no aircraft. What they were aiming for was joint manning with the French. And I think Brexit has put a little bit of a spanner in the works with that. But essentially, rudderless nation, not in control of our own armed forces. We are very close to not existing as a nation state. This is what the obfuscation is about, delay Brexit, because they can then strip out Britain's military. And of course, the other part going with it is they are certainly going to target Britain's nuclear deterrent, because as far as I'm concerned, I'll just put my belief on the table, as it were. The aim is that the control of nuclear weapons is handed over to the French, and Britain no longer has an independent strategic nuclear deterrent. And it's highly significant. I think David Ellis has mentioned this before, that of course, when you look at the British nuclear processing industry, France is now being brought into that. And that is to help take control of nuclear weapons back over to the French side. So I think there's very, very dangerous policy going on here. And of course, David Cameron has done it out of sight of the public, behind closed doors, with the assistance of a charity, the Franco-British Council. Just incredible stuff when you analyse it. And if I can just add a final prod, of course, we don't hear Nigel Farage talking about any of this. So the in-depth detail of how Britain is being taken apart, its sedition, its subversion. We have not heard Nigel Farage talk about any of these subjects. And of course, he ran away from the subject of political charity common purpose that has done such huge damage, undermining particularly the public sector.
Okay, well, as I say, Cameron and Hollande discussed mutual commitment to continuing a close working relationship with regard to the shared border in Calais. Well, this is Mandy Campbell. She's leaving the civil service. She is Director General of the Immigration Enforcement. She's departing after 30 years at the Home Office. She said, while I'm delighted by the new opportunity ahead of me, I'm also sad to be leaving this great Department of State after 31 years. The Home Office has given me the chance to work on some of the most important issues for society alongside fantastic and dedicated colleagues. Well, let's just remember about the record of immigration enforcement while it's been under the control of Mandy. Here we are. The Director General of Immigration Enforcement has lost track, apparently, of 50,000 illegal immigrants. Now, this is from 2010, I believe. MPs accused the Home Office officials of being complacent. She, of course, said it wasn't her fault. It was because the Home Office had hired Capita to track down migrants. It was Capita's fault. Well, who asked the Home Office to hire Capita?
The government, I would imagine, Mike.
Well, it was clearly she made the decision. So Capita, 121,000 had been tracked down, but 50,000 couldn't be found. She said at the time, Capita do a range of checks on the individuals to follow up last known addresses and specialist checks with credit agencies. A range of checks takes place to try and determine their location. The group of 50,000 we've had no contact with at all. So she's been doing a good job. Perhaps it's not really too sad that she's leaving.
Well, and we should also remember common purpose super guru Lynn Homer, of course, was brought in to look after the border agency. She'd already failed in Birmingham City Council, created a banana republic. That was the official quote over elections. So they brought her into the border agency. Then they promoted her to transport. Then they promoted her to the Treasury. So what we're seeing is that people who are collapsing infrastructure in UK are rewarded and promoted.
Yes.
It's pretty easy to put this together now.
Well, let's see where James Brokenshire ends up then. So this is Refugee Children, a new scheme which is going to encourage local authorities to care for unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. This is the Home Office and the Department of Education. They have launched a new voluntary transfer agreement between local authorities for the care of unaccompanied children who arrive in the UK and claim asylum. This is called the National Transfer Scheme. And under the scheme, a child arriving in one local authority area that's already under strain, caring for unaccompanied children, can be transferred to another council that has capacity. And as well as that, they say that they are going to provide annual support for each child aged under 16, which is going to range from £34,675 to £41,610. So clearly a lucrative business to look after these unaccompanied children. James Brokenshire said the UK has a proud tradition of offering sanctuary to all those in need of protection, including vulnerable asylum-seeking children, and ensures their welfare and safety is at the heart of every decision made. Well, it's only a couple of weeks since the Independent pointed out that 239 unaccompanied refugee children have disappeared from UK care in 2015. So clearly, Mr. Brokenshire not really living on the same planet as the rest of us. They were saying that the Independent was saying that these children were being taken into a life of slavery and exploitation. And of course, this was the point that I was trying to make when I wrote this post that you can find on my Facebook page, a challenge to Tim Farron MP, when I was making the point that 140,000 children go missing in the UK each year. Most of them, of course, as I say, return home. They're found, but not all. And the main problem is that some of them just disappear. And I was pointing out in this blog post on Facebook that in 2012, the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Runaway and Missing Children and Adults had described this. Well, they said there is a scandal going on in England involving children missing from care, and until recent cases of child sexual exploitation in Rochdale and other places put the spotlight on this issue, it was going on pretty much unnoticed. And according to that report, there are 68,000 children in care in the UK. The report said that the local authority with responsibility for a child is required to report on whether they have run away for more than 24 hours to the Department of Education once a year. Data for 2011 shows that 930 individual children went missing. Using this measure of going missing over 24 hours, police figures suggest 17,000 incidents and 5,000 individual children going missing from care every year. And then I go on to ask how many of these children return, how many of them end up being trafficked. The report says there are also major problems with the quality of data collected on trafficked children. The numbers recorded by CEOP, approximately 300 between 2007 and 2010, is widely thought to be the very tip of the iceberg, and the lack of robust and comprehensive data was also identified by the inquiry as a key obstacle to keeping these children safe. And the point of this blog post was to ask Tim Farron, who had been calling for these unaccompanied refugee children to be brought into this country. I simply asked Tim Farron, what was he going to do to keep track of these children and make sure that by the time they reach the age of 18 and they're coming out of the care system, that they're still safe and looked after. And of course, he hasn't had the guts to respond to that, either to me or to anybody else that wrote to him on this issue. We're already seeing 250 children going missing last year, and yet the government is now making it easier for children to be transferred from one local authority to another. What are the records? What's the record keeping going to be like?
There are no records. We've gone through this several times, talking to the agencies such as CEOP. You ask for details of children missing or abused in care, and there's a stony silence, and we don't keep those sorts of statistics. We've even gone to the Home Office statisticians and said, okay, what information have you got on children missing and abused in care? And their answer is, we don't keep those statistics. And of course, the government doesn't keep those statistics because the government is absolutely aware that children in care are an ideal source of children for abuse. And this is why Westminster is covering up at the moment.
So it's perhaps encouraging, should we say? I'm going to get a bit more cynical in a second. It's perhaps encouraging that the Children and Social Work Bill is in the House of Lords today for its committee stage. But, well, perhaps not. Because here we go. This is a bill to make provision about looked after children and to make other provision in relation to the welfare of children and to make provision about the regulation of social workers. And it discusses setting up a child safeguarding practice review panel. And so let's have a look at the events to be notified to the panel, because this panel is to give oversight to childcare services in the UK. Events to be notified to the panel. Number one, a local authority in England must notify the child safeguarding panel of any of the following that occur in their area. A, the death of a child who's known or suspected by the local authority to have been abused or neglected. B, serious harm to a child who is known or suspected by the local authority to have been abused or neglected. C, the death of a child who was looked after by a local authority. And D, the death of a child in a regulated setting. No mention of children that go missing. No mention of children that are trafficked. This is just nonsense in the light of what we've just reported.
That's correct, Mike, but I'm going to say the trouble with nonsense is people then dismiss it. It was created for a reason. The bill has not been created for fun. It's been created because there's some devious purpose that the government has got in mind. I think it's all to help try and lever in a named person scheme south of the border. But if we really want to understand the sheer horrors of the system in UK and Scotland, we say England, Scotland, and now we know Ireland, we're going to remind people of the Brian and Janice Doherty case. If you have not heard the interviews which David Scott did with this couple, they're on the UK Column website. We have had an extraordinary reaction from people who've listened. I think stunned is the word. And of course, what are we dealing here? We're dealing with a mum and dad who tried to protect their son from the advances of a person who certainly appeared to be a paedophile or with those tendencies, happy to pay £25,000 to abuse the child. But when mum and dad report this to the appropriate authorities, they are hounded, vilified, harassed, and ultimately their children are taken away. And to emphasise the point, there are absolutely no charges or accusations made against the Doherty family. They have done nothing wrong. They have simply reported the advances of a man who would certainly appear to have the abuse of children at heart. And for that, they have had their own children removed. If you haven't listened to that interview, please do. But as I've tweeted out, when you understand this story, it can happen to any parents in UK. The state, in order to cover up the abuse of children, simply takes away children and then vilifies the family. Is this Stalinist Russia? No. East Germany? An African dictatorship? No. This is David Cameron's Conservative Britain in 2016, and this is becoming very serious stuff. There'll be more on the Dohertys, and we are saying that the public should be so concerned over this case that they ought to all wish to get involved in an open source investigation where we ask the questions of the public authorities and we make public the responses. I have to say, Mike, that Police Scotland to date appear particularly wobbly because they're either trying to hide behind data protection, we can't talk to you because of data protection, or else their media teams are so spooked they're putting the phone down. So Police Scotland, we've got Holly Gregg, we've got lots of other cases north of the border, something very dirty, mucky going on.
Yeah, so anybody wanting to get involved in this, anything you discover, please send it along to this email address, dohertyinvestigation@ukcolumn.org. and that will distribute whatever you've discovered to the relevant people.
Absolutely. Well, I'm pausing, Mike, because how do we get into the public mind the danger of what is happening in this country? If we've got a political system that's prepared to lie about the economy, that's one thing. If we've got a political system that's prepared to steal children in order to help protect child abusers, then we're moving into a very, very dangerous phase. And of course, let's remind ourselves that Prime Minister candidate Theresa May is absolutely centre of this, and she's controlling the biggest state spying ring ever seen, I think, in Western Europe.
Pretty nasty story, this in the Mail. Wife fights for a share of ex's £175,000 payout for child abuse. This is £175,000 that he compensation that he was given for abuse that he suffered as a child. He considers this money as tainted money, so he put it into a trust fund for his children, and his divorced wife wants half of it under the divorce settlement. The danger of this, Brian, is that this could become a precedence case.
Yeah. Just a nasty story. Sums up stuff happening in the country at the moment. Let's jump over to Mr. Alex Salmond, because he said something very, very interesting in the Independent. He's saying that the Jeremy Corbyn coup has been designed to stop him calling for Tony Blair's head after the Chilcot report. I find this very interesting. There's clearly no love lost between Alex Salmond and Tony Blair. What do you think of it?
Off with his head.
Okay, I think we know the answer to that one.
Yeah.
But we can't mention it.
No, we can't.
So we will also move on and just remind people, now this is going back, I think it was January 2010, Hutton Inquiry closed David Kelly's medical reports for 70 years. So let's just remember, as the Chilcot report is due to come out, that Hutton Inquiry closed those medical reports for 70 years. So this again gives us a good insight into the government, which is pure lies and deceit when necessary to deceive the public.
Now, of course, many people have been waiting for the Chilcot report in the hope that this will open a pathway to Tony Blair ending up in the International Criminal Court in The Hague. They, unfortunately, as reported by The Independent yesterday, have decided that's not likely to happen. They aren't going to be looking at the whatever number of million of pages that there are in this report for anything about Blair or the legality or any war crimes with regard to Blair, but individual soldiers who were sent over there by Blair and who it's felt acted beyond their authority, shall we say, well, they might be prosecuted. But Blair is apparently made of Teflon.
Well, I think I understand what this is about, Mike. I think this is a very cynical, nasty, devious tactic in order to stir up more trouble inside the armed forces. Yep. Because what is this going to do? It means that people serving at the moment are going to be extremely angry, and other people are going to say, well, I don't want to join the armed forces because I'm going to be stitched up by my own government. So I think part of this will be yet another attack to actually destroy Britain's armed forces, and they have to do that in order to allow the EU to continue to become the superstate.
Right, okay, well here is the next man adding Teflon to Tony, because this is Robin Butler, Lord Butler, and he was the man who ran the 2004 review into the weapons of mass destruction intelligence. And he has said this, in fact, the Joint Intelligence Committee said to him, that's Tony Blair, the intelligence was sporadic and patchy. Then Blair said to the House of Commons that it was extensive, detailed and authoritative. That is where the inconsistency lay. I don't call that a lie. He may himself have thought it was extensive, detailed and authoritative, but it wasn't.
Well,
so it was just a mistake, Brian.
Well, maybe Lord Butler doesn't actually know what a lie is, Mike. Maybe he's got a little bit of a dose of this. He doesn't know what a lie is, so he can't possibly say whether Blair lied or not. But it's pretty obvious he lied, isn't it? Because he was given the information and he told the Lords something completely different.
Well, I mean, Lord Butler, it might be something to do with that hat.
Okay, yes. Move on.
Yes. Okay, so what's next? Tony Blair faces calls for impeachment. This isn't going to happen. This isn't going to happen. Impeachment is a process where Parliament, the House of Commons, acts against somebody who has broken the law. It's a common law process. First of all, the House of Commons wants to deny common law as much as it possibly can, so it's not going to impeach Tony Blair. Second of all, Parliament is in disarray. It couldn't organise the proverbial in a brewery. So there's no danger of this happening at all.
But it creates turbulence. It keeps the public mind away from Europe. So I think the timing for this is absolutely beautiful. Yeah. Brexit and then Chilcot, and then let's play games that something's going to happen with Tony Blair.
Yes. Okay, I wanted to attract everybody's attention to the City of London Corporation Open Spaces Bill. This is an interesting little piece of legislation which is going through Parliament at the moment. And it's interesting because it's a private bill. It's not a private member's bill. It's just a private bill. So what's a private bill? Well, these are bills which are usually promoted by organisations like local authorities or private companies to give themselves powers beyond or in conflict with the general law. Private bills only change the law as it applies to the specific individuals or organisations rather than the general public. Groups or individuals potentially affected by these changes can petition Parliament against the proposed bill and present their objections to committees of MPs and Lords. So what this is about is the fact that under the British Constitution, under British common law, human beings like you and I are assumed to have the right to do whatever we like unless it's prohibited by law. But corporations have the right to do nothing except where it's permitted by law. So what a private bill is about is getting that permission for a corporation to act in a way that otherwise, as it wants to, right? So this is with regard to open spaces, and this is. Just read out the first paragraph here. The bill confers certain additional powers to the City of London Corporation with respect to open spaces it manages outside the City of London. Some of these powers are conferred in relation to the open spaces managed by the corporation inside the city as well. But now these open spaces are really within the remit of the City of London Corporation due to local acts and instruments. But what they're asking for, I'll just run through a couple of the things that they want. Clause 8 provides a statutory basis for the use of open spaces for the purposes of utilities infrastructure. And so the question I'm asking, is this fracking related? Is that why they're asking for this at this particular time? The document here says that it's to do with underground pipes and wires, but why ask for this at this time when fracking is so much on the agenda? So I'm just asking that question. I don't know the answer to that. Clause 11 empowers the corporation through its authorised officers to issue fixed penalty notices for certain offences in the open spaces. So what we're looking at here now is a corporation issuing fixed penalty notices, not a local authority, not government, not the police, a corporation, and particularly the City of London Corporation. Clause 12 extends to the corporation the power to make community protection notices. So now we're giving a corporation the ability to put community protection notices. These are the successor to ASBOs, antisocial behaviour orders. So we're now putting community protection notices on people they don't like, perhaps. People that are standing in open spaces making speeches or
people who are causing them trouble.
Right. Clause 13 imposes a requirement on suspected offenders to give their name and address to an authorised officer of the corporation. Well, we have no obligation under common law to give our name and address to a policeman. So why should we be giving our name and address? Why should we be permitting legislation which gives a corporation the power to demand and require our name and address? This is pretty dangerous stuff. And
it's coming in through the back door as usual. People would not be seeing this. It's not being talked about in the media.
And this is the danger of the EU referendum and the psyop around it, because all the noise is being generated around that. All the noise is being generated around the leadership elections. All this stuff is going on under the radar, and not many people are paying any attention to it.
Yeah. Right, well, as we come to the close of the news today, we better just mention the BBC, and I was intrigued that I tweeted out over the weekend this unbelievable BBC, well, it wasn't an interview, it was just a BBC reporter talking about Hillary Clinton, and there was nothing in it, Mike. There was no proper investigation or analysis of the mucky stuff that Hillary Clinton's been involved in. It was simply a nice bit of smoothing of the waters and, well, we don't think this will interrupt Hillary Clinton's campaign. So it was complete nothingness. But what I'd like to say is that it was very good to see that a lot of people picked up on it. And so that particular tweet moved. Sorry, I'll just that was the tweet that went out. And it was pushed on quite nicely. So I think people are beginning to see it. But this one is something I couldn't resist because David Cameron abused by Welsh fans after his pretend support for Wales. So this is quite interesting because typically David Cameron tweeting out, I can't think of the right word, but huge game for Wales tonight, well done. And after the match, he's saying passion and pride shown, brilliant. But it was the comments by the Welsh people in response. You don't care about Wales, stop lying. So that was pretty to the point. Don't even think about pretending to support Wales. You lot haven't done so for the last 40 years. And the last one, excuse for UK column, piss off.
Yes.
So I think people are really starting to see through these people. You've been sussed. But we'll end on this note. I've labelled it Happiness as Organisations Set Up to Deal with Politicians. I've mentioned cuddling several times because, of course, we're not allowed to be nasty to our politicians. So we've got a cuddling agency which is offering dusk to dawn snuggles. They're charging £50 an hour. This is cuddling, Mike, £50 an hour or £450 for a dusk till dawn snuggle, 10:30 p.m. until 7 a.m. And I did tweet out a while ago that we could probably cuddle our politicians to death. So I wonder whether we might book David in for a snuggle.
Well, we got to start a crowdfunding campaign for that.
If we can possibly raise £450, we can get David in to be cuddled because those nasty Welsh people clearly don't like him. Well, we've ended on a bit of a humorous note, but if we look out across the country, as Mike has said, UK rapidly becoming without any sense of direction. And of course, this was the plan of the EU referendum PSYOP. So there will be no Brexit unless 17 million voters start to really pull their weight and the British government gets told what it now needs to do to get us clear of the EU. If it doesn't, what is the outcome? It's the EU superstate, and that will effectively be the clock striking 13. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.